All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start our recording here, and I'll do a little bit more of an introduction to myself for those who don't know me very well in a few minutes. And of course, the chat box here is open and I want you to be using it. I want this to be as interactive as possible, just because, as great as it is for me to be here and be able to share all this information with you, as you all probably have already come to find with my Instagram content or my podcast. I like to talk, I like to share, I like to teach people about nutrition, but I also want you to feel like you're part of this as well. And, like you are able to ask questions and give feedback and kind of share as we go. So I'll be prompting you throughout the session today to type things in the chat box, to share and give your thoughts and ideas. And I really encourage you to participate and do that. If something is really resonating with you, if something is like kind of, blowing your mind or anything like that, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Like, let's make it really active and have lots of communication in there today. So we are here today for Fuel Better, Run Faster, for the purpose of helping you as a runner really reconnect with your love of running. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. And the reason why my whole focus and the work that I do as a dietitian is helping runners fuel better, because I just know how much of a difference it can make, the power of good nutrition in not only your performance as a runner and how much you enjoy running, or not only your performance and the results you get from running, but how much you enjoy running. I mean, we are all here today because we spend the money on the race registrations, we buy the shoes, we get the gear, we've got our watches and all of our tech and everything like that. And what do we do this for if we don't really love it? And when we dial in to our nutrition plan, it can make a world of difference. So it can be really hard though. We're navigating this world of conflicting, nutrition information as a whole can be really conflicting. It can be really hard to find reliable information online. And when you go down the rabbit hole of running nutrition, the reality is that the vast majority of nutrition information you see on the internet is not good advice for you as a runner. So when you're looking at, I'll say, general nutrition content, or you're looking at nutrition content for bodybuilders, or you're looking at nutrition content for, people who run 5Ks as opposed to marathons and stuff like that, a lot of what you're going to see online is not going to be conducive to helping you as a runner improve your performance or your body composition, or like I said, really your enjoyment and the pleasure that you get from running. And really, when we look at the numbers around this stuff, there's, some really kind of staggering information that we can gain from looking at some of the data and some of the research that's been done when we look at nutrition practices and fueling. So we simultaneously have an estimated 70% of athletes who are not eating enough to support their training. And even if you sitting here today listening to me talk about this, maybe don't feel like you're an athlete, like maybe you're like, okay, Steph, but she's talking about like, college athletes and professionals and not me. But the reality is that you, as somebody who runs half marathons, ultra marathons, do we have any triathletes here on the call? Raise your hand or let me know if you do triathlon, stuff like that. I mean, you are an athlete because you have to put so much time and effort and intention into your training. And the higher the volume of work you do, the more endurance-based sports that we do. Being female is also kind of another risk factor for underfueling. And of course, being in sports where there is a weight focus. So we simultaneously have 70% of athletes who are estimated to be underfueling. We also have 74% of runners who are concerned about their weight. So there's almost this perfect overlap between the amount of people, the proportion of people who are not eating enough to support their training and the people who are concerned about their weight. Now, we could definitely argue that maybe these are maybe these people are not the same people, but a lot of them would be, right? Like there's going to be definitely a lot of overlap here. And so when we're looking at that, it's no real surprise that people are confused, and we start to dig into the reasons why. We can see that there actually is a lot more to this story that's going on. And here's, how we can kind of break it down. The biggest concerns, some of the biggest concerns that I see from runners in the running community, maybe this speaks to you in your experience, but it's definitely what I see out there, the people that I talk to on my social media, in the Facebook groups, everywhere, is that so many people are running because of a desire for weight loss, either becoming runners and starting running as a whole, or looking at taking on new challenges, or you've always been a runner, but then you also are looking at weight loss on top of it. So we've got this desire for weight loss. And then, the advice, the bad advice that we get is that you need to eat less and move more. So the solution to this problem is just eat less and move more, and you will lose weight. But when you are already doing these really high volumes of training, you're already running hours and hours a week, doing cross training, strength training, like you're already incredibly active. And then we try to create this really big calorie deficit. We're trying to essentially diet, whether we want to label it that way or not, trying to follow this lower calorie eating plan. And then we feel like garbage on our runs, right? So our results go out the window, our energy goes out the window. We have, more injuries. We're not hitting our paces. We don't have the endurance. We basically just hit that wall of not being able to perform because we're not getting the fuel that we need. And so then we inevitably, at some point in time, this is all going to fall apart on us. We are then overeating and getting into this cycle of overeating, undereating. We're not getting the results. We are also not happy or satisfied with what's going on here, but it feels like a cycle that we can't seem to break because everything we're hearing, like all the messaging we're getting, is really basically telling us that we just need to eat less and move more. Cut out carbs, do intermittent fasting, follow this new kind of trendy diet, whatever it might be. But essentially, a lot of it's boiling down to this concept of simply eating less and moving more. And so, of course, not being able to stick with it and getting caught in this cycle of the inevitable overeat, undereat is something where too many runners are going to be stuck. So what we need to do instead, right, we want to shift away from that, away from these concerns and away from this cycle into really finding and getting nutrition and training advice that is actually made for runners. And I can't stress enough the importance of this is having a place to go, having resources and information that has been created and tailored specifically for the running community and is always talking about running and giving advice with runners in mind. Also having a place to ask questions and connect with like-minded runners. So having that community as well, where you can get advice from people and kind of share ideas and challenges and stuff like that is really helpful. And then of course, someone to give you clear, personalized answers to your questions and is a source of reliable advice. So I said at the beginning that I was going to do a little bit more of a thorough introduction to myself. And I sort of wanted to set the stage of where we're coming from, what the problem is, and then bring you back to my story and how I kind of evolved with my running, nutrition, and all of that kind of stuff, and had to learn some incredibly hard lessons along the way. So I specifically choose this photo. This was I always forget the year. I think this was the 2018 Manitoba half marathon that I ran. And this was my worst race ever. I really was following nutrition and training advice from the wrong people. I was, letting non-runners and, I'll say maybe more influencers in the space or whatever you want to call it, really affect how I was feeling myself and affect how I was approaching both my training and my nutrition. So I was really following advice that was not made for me and was not necessarily made for runners. And I sort of thought that I could get by without fueling properly for long runs and races. And I sort of thought that, it wouldn't affect me or that, I didn't really need to worry about fueling that much or kind of take it too seriously. And I mean, at this point, I was already a dietitian. Like I was a registered dietitian. And, I did have a real interest in working with athletes and stuff like that. But, I think like all of us, sometimes it's hard to apply that knowledge to ourselves. And I spent a lot of years really frustrated and disappointed in my performance. So the reason that I choose this photo is because I slapped a smile on my face, but this was my worst race ever. And I was basically in tears when I got across the finish line of this run. I got my medal, and I said to my husband, oh, let's just go take stupid picture. So I, stomped over to the backdrop and I took the stupid picture and I slapped a stupid smile on my face. But I'm glad that I have this sort of memento of that day, because I can look at this day and then I can look to the next year when I PR'd on my half marathon. Just one year to the next made such a huge difference, because I really started to focus in on the proper fueling and training strategies that I needed. I started looking at the right resources that were going to make a difference in my overall performance. And sure enough, we don't have tears hidden behind the sunglasses. This is a real smile. And I was absolutely thrilled when I crossed the finish line that day instead. So because of all that is when I created the Fuel Train Recover Club. This is my online group program that I developed specifically to help give you the resources, the support, and tools that you need so that you don't have to struggle through your training and feel all of the frustration and disappointment on race day like I did. And, I went through a few years of never really being able to get faster. Like after my first race, it was like, okay, first race, I have no previous experience. So I don't know where to go from here. And then I had year after year after year after that of not getting better, not getting faster. And then finally it kind of came to a head with that really bad day. And then I finally got my act together, figured it out, and here I am now. And I know, probably a lot of you, I mean, you can let me know in the chat if you've ever had a bad race. And, for so many people, we pick up running, we start running because we enjoy it. But as time goes on and as the years go on, we sort of disconnect from that love of running because we're just not really getting the results anymore. And yes, we do it for the fun of it, and we do it because we do enjoy the experience of racing, but we also do want to be getting something out of the hard work that we're putting in. So we've got resources that you need to feel confident, the support where you can ask questions all the time, get personalized answers, no judgment, none of that. And then, of course, tools that you're actually going to use in the real world, having those tangible resources that can help you put it into practice. So I want to just take a really quick pause here before we move on to the next part of our webinar, where we're going to talk in a little bit more detail about what that fueling plan looks like. And I want you to just put in the chat for me, what is your biggest issue? So what is the number one thing that you find yourself struggling with when it comes to your fueling strategy? What's kind of the biggest problem that you're facing right now? There are absolutely no wrong answers. Just go ahead and pop it in the chat, and I will give you a minute to do that while I take a sip of my water. Don't be shy. All right, so we have during a long run, running out of gas in the last half. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So, just maybe starting off feeling pretty good, feeling strong, and then, well, kind of peter out as time goes on. Thank you, Wendy, for that. GI issues while running when fueling. Yeah, definitely. And, I think we're going to touch on that as we go through. And I'm trying to remember if I have it here in the webinar or if I have it in one of the podcast episodes that I recently recorded, but I'm trying to think. I was talking specifically about the challenges around fueling, and how for so many people, it's not so much of that you don't want to fuel. Like, it's not like you don't know the importance of fueling or that you're not invested or believe in the power of fueling. It's like, literally, how do I incorporate this when I do fuel my gut gives me problems. Like, how do we navigate that? So that's a really great point that you bring up, and we can definitely, of course, talk about that a little bit more at the end of the call today. And then, of course, in the program, we have tons of stuff to help you out with that. So, Stacy, biggest issue is food fatigue. Eating becomes a chore. I don't have an appetite after a hard effort. Yeah, okay, for sure. So, balancing out the need for nutrition for recovery, and sort of having to put something in your body with that low appetite right after. And sometimes that can be, sometimes that can be a problem of the pre and intra run fueling and hydration kind of approach. Like, sometimes it's a problem we get back from a run. We're so overheated that of course we don't feel hungry. Like, when your body temperature is elevated, your appetite goes down. So if we can help with that, and we can stop us from getting so overheated, that really just comes down to hydration. We can feel hungrier sooner. But again, a really common issue that can stop people from getting in enough energy to support their recovery afterwards. Vicky, overall diet is midline healthy, not so healthy choices. Okay. So is it more like a consistency, a balance thing, something like that? And for Amber, not knowing how to properly fuel before, during, and after. Yeah, for sure. So, it's funny, I was talking to someone today about this, and she said, like, she's been running for 40 years, this individual I was speaking with. And she's like, I've never really thought about fueling before. Like, it was just something that was so new. And certainly in the last, I would say maybe 10 or 15 years is when nutrition for runners and a lot of the sport products and stuff like that have really become front of mind. It wasn't something that we really did focus on in previous decades. But yeah, kind of just that needing to get an understanding of what a proper fueling plan even looks like. So you can keep those rolling in if anyone else has anything else to add. But where we see a lot of commonalities and issues is that people feel overwhelmed by conflicting nutrition information. So even if you have an interest in nutrition and you do want to learn more about it, when you actually go searching for that information, like I said, so much is not meant for you as a runner that we just get overwhelmed, we get that Google fatigue, and we just spin in circles and don't do anything. We also can find ourselves really frustrated by either a lack of results or the things that we're trying not working. And this, can really speak to some of the people who have issues with gut health and digestive issues during runs, where, you want to fuel, but when you do fuel, you have gut issues. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And it can just become really frustrating to not be getting where you want to go. And of course, at the end of the day, when we are overwhelmed and we're frustrated, that eventually leads us to really feeling burnt out. And we start to question if any of this is even worth it. Like, is signing up for these races worth it if I'm continually disappointed in my performance? Is trying to eat better worth it if every time I try, I have these gut problems? Or I just end up wasting so much time on trying to learn more about nutrition, and I'm not getting the answers I want. And we just, you reach that point where you just want to give up. And so how can we make any of this better? So what can you do to really help to start solve these nutrition problems, feel really confident and great about your fueling strategy, and make sure that going forward, you know exactly what to eat and when. You know how to fuel. You have the knowledge to choose your pre, intra, and post workout meals. You've got that really solid foundation of being able to feed yourself in a way that feels great and also get you great results. The first thing that we want to do here is we do want to get advice specifically meant for runners. So whenever you're looking at nutrition information, someone is trying to give you nutrition information or advice or whatever it might be, we have to make sure that it is specifically meant for runners. And that means that it's actually going to work if it's meant for runners. And not that running is immune to a lot of BS, because certainly you can find just as much BS around nutrition and, encouraging under fueling and really extreme fasting protocols, really extreme low carb diets and stuff like that you do see out there. So I'm not going to pretend that like anybody who talks about nutrition for runners automatically is good news to follow. But of course, it's going to be a huge step in the right direction. So we know that advice is going to actually work. And the second thing is understanding the fundamentals of nutrition and training so that you can feel confident in your strategy and don't kind of get led down these weird paths and kind of down these sort of rabbit holes of stuff every time something new, some kind of new fad, new trend, whatever comes on the market. You know, we can really critically think and assess based on what we know about the fundamentals so that we feel confident in whatever we're doing. We don't get kind of swept up in every new trend that passes by. And so what you need, the roadmap here that we're going to talk about today, is about having a personalized nutrition strategy that works. You know, at the end of the day, we are all unique, we are all different, and what works for one person may not be the thing that works for someone else. And, you know, for those of you who mentioned that one of your biggest issues comes down to like your gut health and how your digestive system functions during a run, that means that there may be certain foods, certain products, certain brands, certain things that you do before, during a run that someone else doesn't need to do, or certain brands that work for someone else don't work for you, right? It's all about figuring out what's going to work for us and then feeling confident in how to eat and train for your goals. So knowing that, okay, this is where I want to get to, this is my end goal, these are the steps that I need to get there. And so I have enough confidence to do that consistently. And then we build up on those small things towards reaching the bigger things. If we have a clear understanding of what we want to achieve, breaking that down into the action steps is relatively simple. Executing and doing those things on a consistent basis, you know, not always the easiest. A lifestyle change and you know, making big habit changes isn't always easy. But if we have confidence that we're going to get where we want to go, that can make a huge difference. And then this last point goes all the way back to what I said about 70% of athletes under fueling. We have to eat enough to fuel our training. We just have to eat enough to fuel our training. There's no two ways about it. We can have the most beautiful nutrition plan, super balanced, great macronutrient split. We can have our roadmap of where we want to go. Like, we can have all of that stuff, all the strategy laid out. But if we are not eating enough calories and getting in enough fuel to support our actual day-to-day training, we are not going to become a better runner. We're not going to get anywhere. All right, so let's dive in to talking about how specifically we can fuel our bodies in order to reconnect with our love of running. So now that we've sort of set the stage, we've talked about goals, we've talked about, you know, exactly kind of where we want to get to, the things that we need, the tools that I want you to have in place so that you can achieve what you want to with your running. Let's get into more specifics. So, do you know where you get lost? Like, if you're here today hoping to learn a little bit more about nutrition, whether it's because of your GI issues or because you just don't know what to eat and when, or you have issues with appetite and stuff like that. But do you kind of have a sense and you sort of know do you know where you get lost? Or is it sort of like, I just don't know. Like, I feel super confused, super frustrated by the whole thing, and I'm really not sure where I'm going wrong. And you know, it can be both. It's either a matter of that we're following the wrong advice, we're getting stuck in that under eating, overeating cycle, or it can be that we are really confused about how do we simultaneously eat better and fuel ourselves properly while also reaching our weight and body composition goals. And this is again where we can see a lot of conflicting advice and information about how, you know, if we're training for a race, let's say, you know, a lot of people are going to tell you, well, you can't lose weight while you're training for a race. But then you see people who are losing weight while they're training for a race. And it's like, well, what gives? How is it working for this person when I've been told that this is impossible and this shouldn't be a goal of mine, but it happens to be working for them? Like, what's going on here? And what this really boils down to is the unpredictability of what can happen when we are taking on new nutrition or new training habits. And so, depending on where we're starting from, depending on our genetics, depending on how we respond to different types of training, there are some people who may, you know, often lose weight while they're training for a marathon. Is that always good weight loss, healthy weight loss? Maybe, maybe not. Like, who's to say? But to say that it's impossible and it can't happen and it shouldn't happen isn't necessarily valid when we see that it does happen for people all the time. Whereas a lot of people report that they actually tend to gain weight when they're in a race training cycle. And again, this may not be necessarily a bad thing. It may just be what their body needs in order to improve performance. Or it may be a matter of we need to modify and maybe tweak some strategies around their eating, whether it's meal timing or food choices, to maybe stop that from happening if it's a lot, or excessive. So that brings us to your Fuel Better, Run Faster roadmap. And here are the 3 steps that I want to lay out for you today that are going to work every time. These are the keys. These are the things that we have to do. Step number 1, as I said, is eat enough to fuel your training. And I can't stress it enough. I'm going to tell you this 1,000 times today, so buckle up to hear this over and over and over again. But we have to be eating the right amount for the training that we're doing. If we aren't doing that, and we are depriving our body of fuel and nutrients, we can't perform our best. We won't recover. We will have a very hard time building muscle, losing body fat, all of the things that we're trying to achieve. And it sounds really counterintuitive. But when we look at what happens to our metabolic rate, how we burn calories when we are in this really big calorie deficit, we don't burn calories at our optimal rate. And so when we get into that overeat, undereat cycle, this is where we find ourselves maybe gaining weight, or at the very least not losing weight, because we are not burning calories at an optimal amount. We're not burning calories at an optimal rate. And then when we end up overeating, it's easier for us to put on body fat. So we can get really stuck there. The second thing we need to do is we need to time our meals. So over the course of the day, like a 24-hour period, eating enough to fuel our training is key. But the second thing we want to do is not just think about hitting our nutrient targets over the course of the day, like that 24-hour time frame, but we actually want to break it down into when do we eat those calories? How do we space those calories out over the course of the day to optimize our performance and our recovery? Because if anyone's ever had experience with morning running, maybe doing a longer fast in the morning, eating kind of in the afternoon, evening, whether this is intentional or not, it doesn't always have to be that we're labeling it as I'm doing intermittent fasting for this to happen. But I see it all the time with runners, especially people who are trying to lose weight, not always, where we are doing a lot of training in the morning, but we're under eating all day and then we're overeating all night. So we are maybe eating, let's say, our 2,000 calories a day, right? Let's just say our goal is 2,000 calories. If those 2,000 calories are all being eaten after 4 p.m., but we did our run at 7 o'clock that morning, that in and of itself is enough of an issue that we can really struggle in terms of results. And we can actually inadvertently end up eating too many calories because we're so hungry later in the day that we are not getting in the quality nutrition that we need. So we tend to maybe eat too much, maybe choose the wrong things. Maybe it's a lot more snack foods and quick convenient things later in the day because we are so hungry that we're just, we've all been there. We've all been totally ravenous before, where it's like we just can't get enough. And, we end up inadvertently over consuming. And what's fascinating is that the research on all of this, total calories for the day, and then how we break down those calories, what the research shows is that people who eat the closest to their actual daily needs, not just as a whole, but also like basically hour by hour. And not that I want you to be like this crazy about it, this sort of nitpicky about it, but to really hone in on timing your meals around when you're most active throughout the day is another thing that leads to better body composition as a whole. Now, that doesn't mean that these are the lightest people, right? This isn't looking at who weighs the least amount. This is muscle to fat ratio, body composition, which in so many areas of health and performance is more important than just the number on the scale. So we need to eat enough to fuel our training. We need to be really, really intentional about timing our meals around when we're most active and using that as our guide to when we eat versus eating by someone else's clock or someone else's plan. And if we say, okay, well, I'm going to eat my meals at this time, my workout's totally separate time of day, we can be doing ourselves a real disservice. Instead, we want to have mostly overlap between when we train and when we eat. And the third thing that we want to do, this one's a little bit out of left field compared to the other two, but it's still so key here. is we need to improve our relationship with food and exercise too. But today we're talking about food, but we really want to be improving our relationship with food because it makes the rest of this so much easier. When we have a healthy food relationship and we feel really positive about eating, we feel positive about fueling properly, we do not have a lot of stress or anxiety about eating more, eating enough to fuel our training. We don't have a lot of stress or anxiety about having that intra-run nutrition, taking some sugar along with us on the run, using those intra-run fueling strategies. When we don't feel stress or anxiety about that, we're going to have more confidence in the plan, which means we're going to stick to the plan, be more consistent. And then this is, of course, how we're going to come full circle and get the results that we're looking for. But if eating enough to fuel our training and timing our meals and getting the nutrition in when we need it is a very difficult thing for us to do mentally because of that poor food relationship, then we can still stay stuck. We might have the knowledge, we might understand that that is something that we should do, but we have trouble taking action. We have trouble actually putting it into practice because it's that fear, especially that fear and anxiety around weight gain, that can really hold us back. So these are the 3 steps. We're going to dig into each one a little bit more in more detail, and I'll share a little bit more of the how-to as we look at each one of these. So I kind of gave an overview of how we eat enough to fuel our training. But the first thing that I want you to do, if you're stuck here and this is what's been a problem for you, is we need to stop just trying to eat less and move more. So if that's been kind of your MO, and maybe that's been intentional or unintentional, but if you have found yourself in a position of, trying to create this really big calorie deficit, trying to train, whether that's running, cross training, whatever, as much as humanly possible, so that you are going to be able to eat more, so you have more wiggle room with your diet, or so that you have a bigger deficit, and with the MyFitnessPal tracking or whatever you happen to use for that. If you're just kind of trying to eat less and move more, I want you to just stop it. No, we're not doing that. Erase it from your mind. Never think these words ever again. Because this is what's keeping us stuck, and this is what's stopping us from eating enough to fuel our training. And like I said, the research is really supportive in showing that when we eat enough to fuel our bodies appropriately, we see better results. We have better quality training sessions. We get further way faster than staying stuck in this struggle. And so when it comes to eating enough to fuel our training, there's a couple key things that I want you to know, and a couple key takeaways that I want you to take from today. The first thing is that our primary carbs are going to be, our primary fuel is going to be carbs. So that means that we don't need to limit carbs to an extreme, especially when we're training for a race, and especially, before and during workouts. Carbs are going to be fuel. So if we want to train and perform at higher intensities, meaning if we want to run faster, if we want to hit paces on workouts, if we want to be able to pull out all the stops at a race and really show ourselves what we can do on race day, carbs are fuel. And even in I'll say sort of the circles or the communities of people that are a little bit more, not anti-carb, but in the communities and places that you'll see where people are a little bit less supportive of generally fueling with more carbs, they still far and away recognize the importance of carbs for high intensity workouts and carbs for fueling races. So, there is absolutely no argument. There's absolutely nobody that can say that carbs don't fuel performance, especially higher intensities. Now, can we train ourselves with low intensity base building type training to improve our use of fat as fuel? 100%. And that's part of the beauty of the low intensity easy running, is that we do develop a better ability to burn fat as a fuel source. But at no point in time does that negate our need for carbs. It just means that we are going to have more carb available for when we want to push at the end of a race and really, kind of blow across the finish line, or when we need to, fuel a long run or something like that. So carbs are fuel. They're an important fuel. And if you are a runner, I want you to be eating them. The second thing to note is that no single nutrient causes weight gain. So it's not a matter of, okay, if I want to lose weight, I have to cut the carbs. If I want to gain weight, or if I don't want to lose weight, then I'm going to eat carbs. No single nutrient outside of a total calorie surplus causes weight gain. If you've been very low carb and you have a higher carb meal, yes, you're going to have some glycogen and some water repletion in your muscles. That's going to make the scale go up. But that's not fat gain. It's just, that repletion of carbohydrates and water within your muscle cells. On that note, though, what I also want to point out here is that weight loss and fat loss are not the same thing. So all weight loss is not fat loss, and all weight gain is not fat gain. So when we look at body composition, and you've heard me say that term a few times already tonight, I am so focused on body composition as opposed to just weight loss, because I want you to get stronger, reduce injury risk, get faster, feel good when you run. And that doesn't always come at, dropping the number on the scale, but sometimes it is a matter of improving and changing body composition. And the last thing here that I want to note that's really important is that undereating is a direct cause of overeating. So when we are underfueling and we are not giving ourselves enough calories, that is a solo trigger that can singly, that's not the word I'm looking for. That can on its own basically be a trigger for overeating. And again, like if you've ever gotten so hungry, we all have, like we've all gotten to that point where we are so ravenous that we just are eating everything and anything until we maybe don't feel good, right? We totally overdo it. We eat too much too fast. Our eyes are, what do they say? Our eyes are bigger than our stomach, right? We've all been in that scenario. And if we're continually caught there in this overeating and undereating cycle, we're actually going to get nowhere despite feeling like we're working really, really hard. All right, so then next we want to talk about how do we create a meal timing strategy that is conducive to our personal training plan, our training schedule, and how do we kind of make that fit in a way that makes sense. So we need to time our meals around our training schedule. So we are not eating at 9, 1, and 7, because that's when we eat, unless you have the kind of like work schedule or something where that's how it needs to be. I mean, that's fine. But what we really want to look at is when are we doing our training? And then what time do we have to eat to make that make sense around our training schedule? It's a bit of a different way of thinking about when we're going to eat throughout the day. So the first thing we have to think about is what we eat before our run, what we're eating during our run, and then third, what we're eating after our run. And this is how we get better performance and also better results. So before the run is when we want to be fueling up with carbohydrates. So we want to be putting literally gas in the tank. We want to be putting fuel in our fuel tank being our muscle and our liver, so that we have the energy to burn before we run. And this is kind of coming back to the undereating causing overeating problem, is that a lot of people don't fuel up very well before they run. So they're going into that run with not enough gas in the tank, not enough energy on board. They're going to not be as fast. They're going to fatigue sooner. They're going to not have the mental or the physical stamina to complete some of those hard workouts. And so because we didn't have a optimal quality workout, we're not getting the full benefit of the training that we're doing. So we are not fueling properly before we head out the door. We don't have enough gas in the tank to do the run that we want to do. And so then our training quality isn't optimal, which means we're not burning as many calories as we should be, as we want to be or think we are during that workout. Maybe we're quitting early, maybe we're not hitting our paces, whatever it is, we're not getting in the quality performance that we need. And then we're maybe overeating later in the day. So it's easy to see how this can become a real problem. The workout effort feels really hard. We feel like we're putting in a ton of effort. It's not easy to do the workout, yet it's still not going to be conducive to optimal performance. And then, of course, what we eat during the run is really important as well, both for gut training purposes, getting us ready for race day, and then also just providing that sustained energy during long runs and really hard workouts. Also going to be key. We don't want to skimp on the intra-run nutrition, thinking that we want to save those calories for later. This is a time when we are burning a ton of energy. We want to make sure that we're supporting that as much as we can. And then afterwards is when we have our opportunity for recovery. And so this is where we also want to be focusing in on our protein and our carbs. that combination is what's going to replenish muscle glycogen, which is how we store carbohydrates in our muscles, and also give us the protein that we need to start those recovery processes, which is going to be building and repairing our muscle tissue. This is so key, because if we're skipping that post-workout meal and we're not getting in that energy replacement, that glycogen replacement, we're also not getting in that protein. We've done all this work, and then we're not actually going to see those results in the long run. So we can have more muscle soreness, right? We're delaying our recovery. We might not be able to perform as well like the next day because we delayed that recovery. And then in the long run, we're just not going to get the results that we want to. Like, we're just not going to see the strength improvements, the muscle gain, the improved body composition that we're looking for, because we didn't fuel in a way that allowed us to do that. And this is especially true if, we're not eating what I'll say, like kind of nutrient dense, high quality foods here early in the day. And then we find ourselves so hungry that we're like eating an entire bag of chips or an entire container of ice cream later on, both not super high vitamin and mineral or high protein options. And so we also want to make sure that we are not training fasted. We want to make sure that we're fueling those medium and long runs, even if we don't feel like we need to. We still want to be making sure that we're practicing and we're getting a really good sense of what that race day fueling is going to look like. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we want to plan that recovery meal as soon as possible. And then finally, we have our relationship with food and exercise. And, I spoke already about the importance of this, and I want to come back to some specifics here. This is a critical step if you want to have long-term ease and success with all of the stuff that I'm giving you today. So all of these tips and strategies and pointers that I've shared with you so far, if you want to really implement it in the long run and you want to have that ease and success with your fueling and your training, taking a look at that relationship with food and exercise is absolutely key. And sometimes this can be the missing piece. It can literally be what keeps you stuck. It's going to keep you questioning everything you eat. I know so many runners who have tried to eat less and move more, diet and exercise, fix their concerns, whether it's weight or anything else, with all these different kinds of diets over the years. And when you have so much conflicting information swirling around in your brain all the time from all the different crazy stuff you've read over the years or heard over the years or tried over the years, you reach a point where every single thing you put in your mouth, you question. Should I be eating carbs? Should I be eating fruit? Is it okay for me to eat meat? Is it okay that I have dairy? Should I be missing gluten? I definitely shouldn't have sugar, but also I'm supposed to have these gels. But so everything starts to get really muddy and really messy. And this just adds to the stress and that constant questioning of everything we're doing. And that's not a great way to live our lives. And it's also not a great way to have a strategy that we feel confident in and can be consistent with. And ultimately, our relationship with food can be the thing that stops us from getting the results that we want. Again, we can have the knowledge, we can appreciate nutrition, and we can recognize the importance of nutrition, but it may be the thing that really gets in the way of us being able to take action. So a better food relationship, I was trying, when I was creating these slides, I was trying to sort of define what that would look like for a runner. So like what a better food relationship would look like specifically for somebody who's running and who is very active. And these are the things that I came up with. So it's not a be all end all list. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on all things mental health or anything like that. But, when I'm thinking about a healthy food relationship, what I want for you is to be okay with imperfect eating, to be okay with, not eating super clean every day and not being able to go to a restaurant or order takeout sometimes or have dessert or anything like that. Being okay with that imperfect eating, not being afraid or intimidated to eat more calories or more carbs. So if you have realized in today's session, if you've kind of recognized that, I probably fall into that 70% of people who are under fueling, I want you to, or a better food relationship looks like not being afraid to increase the amount of carbs or calories that you're eating and not having a lot of fear or stress around that. The other thing that a better food relationship can look like is to be meeting our optimal fueling goals consistently. So being able to eat the things we need to eat, being able to fuel before, during, and after our runs, to be having the carbs, taking the gels, drinking the sports drinks, carb loading for races, doing all of those things to optimize our fueling consistently and to really be able to stop obsessing about food and the number on the scale. So those are some things that I kind of came up with in terms of what a better or sort of a healthier relationship with food would look like. And so if any of these are things that you're like, well, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, then maybe that's a sign that your relationship with food might need a little bit of work. So that is a lot that I've shared here. So I hope that you're still with me. If you are still here and picked up on some things, let me know in the chat how you're feeling. Kind of check in. What's kind of coming up for you? Any sort of aha moments? Anything that surprised you from the information here? Anything like that. So like I said, this is a lot. I'll give everyone a second to just, go ahead and type their thoughts and kind of where they're at in the chat while I take another sip of water. Okay. Yeah, so Carlin says food is definitely related to guilt for me. And absolutely, I think, and that's why I really like to bring that concept in, because I think so many runners can have that appreciation to say, like, yeah, okay, I get that I should eat more carbs, but I can't. Like it's very hard to actually put that into practice. And so I appreciate you mentioning that. For any suggestions on before or after run food. So definitely we're going to do some Q&A at the end of the webinar here, so we can talk in a little bit more specifics about what to eat before and afterwards once we get there. So I'll just give everyone a second here to type their thoughts in on where they're at, what their thoughts are here. Okay. All right. So now what do we do? Right? We need to really choose a plan, and we need to follow that plan, right? We need to be consistent with having a roadmap and having that guide and something that we can really follow. And Vicky shared that your information shed a light on the timing of meals in relation to exercise. I do tend to eat very little during the day and eat too much at night. Yeah. And honestly, I would say that that's probably the majority of people that I talk to. Is a lot of us are morning runners, right? We like to get up early, get the workout out of the way. It's a great time of day to exercise, but our timing and our meals really have to reflect that. And it can be difficult, right? If we've got we got to get our workout in, then we got to go to work or school, or we got kids that we're getting ready for the day. It's not always easy, and I think that's why people tend to eat a lot more later on. Okay, so we need to choose a plan. We need to follow that plan. We need to really commit to something that we can have confidence in. And so I want to just finish up here before we get to the Q&A period by telling you a little bit more about where I would like you to begin. I think that, like I said, having information related to specific nutrition advice for runners is so key. And I highly, highly encourage you to be seeking out nutrition information that is specifically made and targeted and created for runners. My program is all about that. And so I think my program is a great place to begin. But even if you don't, choose to work with me, or if you don't choose to look more into this program, I want you to, at the very least, do a program or work with someone or get more information that is specific to running, because I think that is just so critical to really become the best runner that you can be, and to really hone in on that love of running. So as I mentioned, the Fuel Train Recover Club is my online group program where we go through all of the steps that you need in order to optimize your performance, your body composition, your relationship with food and exercise, and gives you the tangible resources that you need in order to make it all come together. So it's not just about information dumping and just me talking at you to kind of say, here's what you do and all of that, but to actually really give you specific resources and tools that you can use. And I'll talk about those in a second. So what's in the program, what you get is, first things first, the access to the online modules. So we've got a full program. It's available on desktop and also on our app, where you can learn on the go. And we've got everything that you need in terms of education to learn all about nutrition, training, and recovery. So the Fuel Train Recover Club online modules are a huge part of what you get with this program, and they basically walk you through everything you need in order to create that nutrition and training strategy. And the process is really about learning how to eat enough to fuel your training, figuring out what that meal timing looks like, improving your relationship with food and exercise, but then also teaching you how to train smarter, giving you the tools that you need, both on the nutrition and training side for injury prevention and recovery, and understanding nutrition for running performance. So really having that solid foundation of knowledge. So long term going forward, you're not, like I said, going to get sucked into every new trend, every new kind of fad and thing that comes on the market. You're going to have that really good ability to think critically about nutrition and training, and to be able to evaluate what to do and how to navigate things going forward. And so with the program, you get a full year of access to all the content. We have modules where, of course, like I said, you can learn and work at your own pace, either on desktop or on your phone. We've got our app where you can literally be on the go and be taking in the content. And it helps you understand your energy needs, helps you understand exactly what to eat before, during, and after training. There's modules dedicated to all that. Modules dedicated to understanding both your macro and micronutrients. So carbs, fat, proteins, vitamins, and minerals, all the things that you need to know about, where to get them in your food sources, what supplements you might need to take, how to hydrate properly, and how to make sure you're getting the right balance of electrolytes. And of course, that's just the fueling part of it. So how we help you eat enough to fuel your training. Of course, there's also all of our training and recovery modules in there as well. And then the second thing is our resources. So, I spoke a lot today about the importance of timing your meals. And that's really step 2 in this whole process, is not just eating enough to fuel your training and having an understanding of how much you need to eat and what that looks like in terms of numbers, but to be able to take that and turn it into, what do I actually eat throughout the day? Like, how do I take my goals and my targets and translate that into meals? How do I make a grocery list? How do I decide what to have for breakfast, lunch, and supper? And so what we've done is we've created full meal plans and recipe collections. So if you're looking for just make me a meal plan, right? Like, I don't really want to have to worry about the numbers. I don't really want to have to worry about those details. I just want someone to give me a meal plan and just tell me what to eat when. We've got you covered with meal plans that are made for runners. And again, I really want to highlight the importance of that. Of course, nutrition advice meant for runners is key, but also second to that, like having these resources and these meal plans that are created for runners is also really helpful, because most of the ones you see out there on the internet just aren't. If it's not a meal plan specifically that you're looking for, but you just kind of want some new, fresh ideas, we have that as well with our recipe collection. So it's not a full day of meal plans, but it's, here's 10 pre-run snack ideas. Here are 10 things that you could eat after a workout that are balanced and have that mix of carbs and protein that you need. So for some of these questions that have already been coming in the chat of suggestions and kind of ideas for what to eat at different times of day, that's exactly what all of these resources are for. And so we're taking the stress and frustration out of figuring out what to eat and when, giving you some new meal inspiration, And of course, we've kept in mind that there are a lot of people who have specific dietary restrictions or needs. And so we have vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free plans in there as well. So there's tons of options. There's a whole library of meal plans and recipe ideas made specifically for runners with varying needs and training goals. All right. And then the other really important part of the program that I want to highlight is the live support. So it's not just the modules and just the resources and the printable stuff like that, but it's also access to me and the live support that I can provide and help you with. And that's such a valuable part, I think, of any work that you do on all of this stuff, because you're going to have questions. Improving your relationship with food and exercise is challenging. It's tough. It's hard to navigate. If it was that easy to just wave a magic wand and fix this problem, you would have by now, right? Nobody wants to live this like stressful and guilty feeling life all the time. So the live support can really go a long way to not only help you talk through some of the struggles and issues that you're having, but also give you feedback and recommendations and to kind of take a look at what you're doing and really help you through these processes. And as well, of course, if you've got questions about, people will maybe want to look at their calories or something like that, and they've done the calculations and we look it over together. Or I've got lots of people in the program right now who are, taking photos of their meals, doing some food logging like that for me. Really low effort level that's required to take pictures of what you eat and sharing that with me, and then we can review it. We can talk about it live. We just schedule a quick Zoom call to go over everything and give you that live support that you're looking for. And of course, I'm also super happy to answer questions via email. So really the value here is giving you the tools that you need to help when you get stuck, giving you expert advice. I am both a running dietitian as well as a certified running and fitness coach, giving you the reassurance that you are on the right track with things. Because, with a lot of this stuff, you don't always see results overnight or in that short term. It's a trust, it's a process that we have to just kind of go with it. Just like when you're getting ready for a race, you start that first week of marathon training and you just have to trust the process and trust the training that you're on the right track, that you're going to get to where you want to go on race day. We need that reassurance and someone looking over our work sometimes to make sure that we're there. And then, of course, help with understanding goal setting and how that looks for you. So, of course, we have improving your relationship with food as the third part, and that's where we get the live support. And you have access to our members only community. And so within the program, we also have a private community on our Thinkific program, which is the platform that I use for this, where it's members only. You can ask questions and get feedback and advice from others there as well. And of course, myself, like I'm always in there answering questions as soon as anybody asks. So I mentioned way earlier in our chat today that, you don't have to do it alone. And part of the problem is that people feel very alone in all of this and don't really know where to turn to. And what happens is we have a question or a concern or whatever. We go online, we get some bad advice. We don't get results. We go back to our usual habits until we want to make a change again. And we kind of just go around in circles, kind of trying all these different things and just, trying to figure out what to do. And the support that we really need comes from having a reliable place that we can get that personalized information that's going to work for us. So I offer email support, extra help with answering questions. There's lots of places in the program that you can ask questions. We also have monthly live group coaching calls where we get on Zoom, kind of like this, but we do a little bit of education, answer some Q&A, talk about things that are relevant at that season of the year throughout that month. And you get group support, lots of contact with me. I'm always available. And of course, the extra answers that you need to all of the questions that might come up as you go through the program. And so the big question that some of you might be thinking is, well, will this actually work for me? Like, will this actually get me where I want to go? And, really at the end of the day, no one reaches their goals alone. If you've ever tried to reach a goal before, you know that it requires support, it requires help, and nobody gets there by themselves. And having the right support and the answers and the reliable advice that you need can absolutely change everything. So support and the resources and tools that you get within the program make sure that you can feel better, you can time your nutrition properly, and of course you can develop and foster a healthier relationship with food and exercise. So all the things that we're doing here today, all the things that we've been working on tonight together to improve your fueling, help you run faster and reconnect with that love of running is what you get with all of this support. And so I wanted to share just a couple of things that things that people have said to me who have worked with me over the last little while. And, you know, if you're kind of wondering, does this fit for me? Like, does this make sense for me? I have had, you know, just in the last month, you know, I've had someone in my program who finished her very first half marathon, and she was so thrilled just to make it across the finish line. And then I also had someone who placed third in a race that she was in. It was a trail running race, and she got third place. So really everyone of all ranges and experience levels, and whether you're slow or fast or you know, experienced or not, if you've been racing for decades or you're brand new, you know, wherever you kind of come into this from on that spectrum as a runner, I think there is always value in learning about a proper fueling strategy. And there's always something to be gained from going through the process of getting that education and that knowledge. Because as I said at the beginning of our webinar today, even runners who, there was a runner that I talked to today who's been running for 40 years. And this is the first time that she's ever really thought about nutrition as a runner. And so a level of experience or even how talented you are, how fast you are, where you might place in a race doesn't necessarily dictate your ability to feel properly. And so if you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, this is probably for brand new runners, or if you're sitting here thinking, well, this is probably for runners who have, you know, been running for 20 years, that's not me. Don't worry. Everyone and anyone is welcome in this program and can definitely find, you know, a spot here in terms of what they're able to achieve and where they're able to go. All right, so the Fuel Train Recover Club is here to support you, give you the information, the knowledge, the tools, and resources. And as a really, really special thank you for everyone who's on the call today, I want to offer you a really a great discount and promotion on joining the program. So the program here is valued at $2,600, and that's 1 year of access to everything, of course, including all of these resources, the live support, the community, all of that. If you went to my website, you would see it listed there for $997. So the value is $2,600. By purchasing the program as this bundle, you're saving a ton already at only $997. That's well over 50% off just the program as kind of a whole package together. But of course, you did not just go to my website. You are not just, you know, a random person landing on my webpage, going and checking out this program. You have spent your evening with me, and I really, really appreciate it. You know, all of you who were able to come here today, all of you who are in the chat, you know, having these discussions and sharing your thoughts and everything there. So I always love to offer an additional discount to anybody who joins the program in the next 48 hours. And the program is available to you as someone who came and joined the webinar for only $598. And that's going to be available for the next 48 hours to you to get this full year of access to all of this content, full access to me and my support, my guidance, the community, the coaching calls, all of that stuff for a full year for only $598. And so I am really also very happy to be able to offer two different options in terms of payments here. So we have the option of one payment of $598. You can do one pay in full option, or we also have a really, really great 6-month plan as well. So you can get started for only $107 a month, which is a wonderful option as well. So you can get started right now if you are interested and you're ready to go and you want to get immediate access to this program. All you actually need to do is just scan the QR code here with your phone, and you can go ahead and join up literally today, literally right now. Take advantage of that really special offer. The 40% off, I believe, is the discount that you get for joining me on the webinar today. And Once again, I really, really want to thank you for being here, for your time and your attention. And it is absolutely wonderful to be able to connect with all of you. So thank you, Sheila. So Sheila is joining us. Sheila is actually in the program right now, and she says, I highly recommend to sign up. So thank you so much, Sheila, for the comment there. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to see the benefits that a proper fueling strategy has already made in the short time that you have been a part of this community. It's really wonderful to see. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much again for joining me. And I am very, very happy now to answer any questions. So if you do want to stick around for a few extra minutes and you've got questions about the program, about anything we talked about today that you want me to answer, then I am here, I'm available. So feel free to just type those in the chat and we will get started with our Q&A. So I'm going to start with the question from Carlin with suggestions on foods for before or after a run. So I will start by saying, of course, like I mentioned before, that in the program, we have full recipe collections and lots of resources and stuff like that on, specific recommendations for what to eat before and after training. But specifically for before, we do want to be focusing on the pre-run carbs. Specifically, it's those quick to digest carbs. So it's the carbohydrates that are going to be in and out of our system as fast as possible. This means we want to choose things that are lower in fat, lower in protein, and lower in fiber, because fat, protein, and fiber actually slow down our digestion. And so that means that if we eat and then we're going for a run kind of really shortly afterwards, then we are going to still have food in our stomach. That is a huge trigger for GI issues. So for those of you that are here today that did specifically mention that gut issues are a problem for you, looking at the specific food choices that we're making before a run is how we can help overcome that. So we want quickly digestible carbs. That might be something like some toast, even and starting with like half a slice of toast. Like it's not this big, massive amount of food that we're eating if we're not used to it. Half a slice of toast, a banana, a little bit of like breakfast cereal, some crackers. It's small amounts of those carbs that are going to be in and out of our stomach relatively quickly. So that's what we want to look at for pre-workout. Post-workout, we want that combination of protein and carbs, but we don't need to be quite as mindful about limiting fiber. And that at that time, because it's okay to have a little bit of, kind of that slower digestion. We've got time, unless you're doing some kind of crazy race that you've got like, legs that you're running back to back or something, then we need the quick energy really fast. But for post run is when we want to have the carbohydrates and the protein. So that could be like, pasta with chicken, or maybe it's like a chickpea wrap, or maybe it's like a stir fry with tofu or chicken in it or something like that. So kind of your regular balanced meals often make really good post-workout meals because they're going to have some protein, they're going to have some carbohydrates in them. For big long runs, in those harder workouts, that's really an opportunity for us to also maybe include some liquid calories, especially if we're not very hungry. So I know someone had mentioned that one of their struggles is a low appetite when they get home from the workout, is that lower appetite. And so this is where something like a smoothie or like a protein shake and a banana, something with like liquid calories to give us a little bit of hydration can make a big difference. I hope that answers your question. And please feel free if anyone else has questions. You can either go ahead and unmute yourself and ask live. Super happy to answer questions live if anybody wants to go ahead and unmute. Or if you've got questions, then you can just type them in the chat. Give everyone a minute here if there's anything else that we want to cover today. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, but somebody might be just taking a minute to type. Can sometimes take a little while. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I want to thank you all so much for being here today. And if anyone does have any last minute questions, I'll hang around for an extra minute or two here to chat. But I'm just going to stop the recording, and thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.